Welcome to bankbeat.biz, our quick takes video blog. My name is Tom Bankston. I'm the publisher of bankbeat.biz website and the magazine BankBeat, which comes out every month. We're very fortunate today to have Dwight Larsen with us. Dwight is the president and CEO of United Bankers Bank. Bankers Bank's playing a very important role in the community banking industry across this country. Hello, Dwight. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks, Tom, for inviting me. Good to be with you.
Great. Let's get right into the questions. Can't avoid talking about the health crisis that we're in the midst of, this pandemic, the coronavirus situation. How are you finding it is affecting UBB's way of doing business?
Well, like everybody else, Tom, it's changed the way we come to work every day. For those of us that do, right now we've got over 75% of our staff working off-site. And for those working on-site, Tom, we've separated people by floor because we've got critical staff here that you just can't work off-site. We need to be linked into the systems here. So we've taken those people and put them on different floors in case you have an infection on one floor. We put people in our disaster recovery site over in Mendota Heights, which we normally don't use, but we had to enact our pandemic response plan back in January. So I gotta admit, it has worked to date great from a staffing standpoint. Our customers are getting their needs met. Our staff is safe. We've had to, though, just make sure that we were prepared. We added a new VPN to add additional bandwidth for capacity so that all of our staff can get in smoothly along with all of our customers. We've got over 750 so odd customers that do business with us electronically, bank customers that is. So we did that. Conference calls, video calls. I mentioned to you, this is my third today. It's the new way of doing things, and it works out, fine overall.
Have you found that most of your customers, the banks out there, have adapted to this pandemic environment and the new kinds of technologies they're having to use as a result?
Yeah, I think, Tom, we are being pushed to use more technology with what's going on out there. We did a survey last fall, UBB did with our banks, asking them, do you have video conferencing capabilities and how would you like us to interact with you? Interestingly enough, it was a pretty large number, said they didn't have video conferencing capabilities. Well, I think some of them don't realize that they've got the webcam on there and that we can link with software. But we've been doing more of that recently, and I think the banks have been very understanding of just regular conference calls. But in the last 6 weeks, they've been so busy with the SBA PPP loans that we haven't done as much direct contact. But I think the banks are definitely getting used to that mode of operation here because their lobbies are closed. They're doing the same things with their customers.
Sure. And so we are seeing a lot of different business practices to fit in with this whole health crisis. What changes do you think might become permanent in terms of the way banks do business?
Yeah, great question. There's going to be continued heavy use of conference calls and videos, Tom. There's no question about that. What they like to call, what is it, technology with the human touch? Well, it's we're going to be pushed to do more of it. One of the things that we did in April, Tom, is our annual shareholders meeting we did on a webcast. And by doing it that way, we got about 3 times as many people as we normally do because it was easy. So I can see that avenue being used definitely going forward. Here at UBB, because we're not a retail bank, we will continue with the work at home options, which will probably mean in a couple of years we'll need less office space. There'll be more of a hoteling. And clearly at some point there'll be what I would assume are going to be core days, Tom, where there's certain meetings, department meetings or manager meetings, we want to get together 1 or 2 days every week or every 2 weeks when everybody will be here. And although we have nothing formal at UBB yet, Tom, I think our business, along with other banks, other businesses, we're probably going to have to come up with some comprehensive safety measure, guidelines that we work with where, it involves probably when you come into the bank, or businesses, you get your temperature taken. You have to wear a mask around the bank, which is, it's sad. It's hard to find humor in these times, but I feel like at sometimes, Tom, we're almost in a a dark comedy by Mel Brooks or the Coen brothers, because now you have to wear a mask to get into a bank. Plus, liquor stores have been deemed essential businesses. I mean, I wouldn't have pictured that. But so some of those comprehensive safety measures, Tom, I can kind of see probably being put in place. Will be slow before we start bringing people back. But we want safety first for our employees, as long as we can meet all of our customer needs. But some formalization is going to happen.
Sure. Sure. And you folks, of course, process a lot of payments, and there's a push in the payments arena to sort of go to a 24/7, 365 model where there's, not the typical day, 5 days a week doesn't really mean anything. And now we're kind of finding work-wise, we're kind of moving to that. As people work from home, it's not always the traditional hours. People work at whatever hours are convenient. People maybe work 3 or 4 days a week, and it isn't always the traditional work days. Kind of interesting how those two things are convening, and I could see would be pretty favorable for what you have to do there at UBB.
It does, Tom. I think it works out fine for our model here. You mentioned in the payment systems, one of the things that we're seeing in the operations department is fewer cash items, which is checks in the last 6 weeks. Also, a lot less foreign currency transactions. It's just, it's the fallout. If you say less business activity going on, that's what's happening up there. But as far as ACH and wire activity, those numbers are up as people use their debit cards. We're not going out to get stamps to use the mail, so we're going to use more electronics to do our business.
Sure. And as you talk to your bank customers across the upper Midwest, across the whole region, what are you hearing from them? What are their top concerns? We're really in a different environment now, and I'm curious whether you're hearing about concerns over asset quality or maybe regulatory issues or political risk, or what's top of mind for community bankers?
Yeah. Boy, I tell you, right now, liquidity, not an issue at all. We've been seeing liquidity building in the banking system since last fall, Tom. From a regulatory standpoint, they actually got out in front to help us. March 15th, it was a Sunday, all of the regulators sent out the guideline that says, hey, banks, work with your borrowers. If you've got to give them a 3 or 6 month interest only, good, work with them. We realize these are unreal times. As it relates to issues, asset quality, yeah, it's not clear what it's going to be right now, but it's going to come to us when you shut down businesses and we have millions not working. So some of the stories from bankers, Tom, one would be on just before the pandemic and a little bit through it, with the drop in interest rates, those banks that have mortgage origination activities, they're doing great, and they'll probably meet their goals by June this year, because it's a great time to refi and get those deals closed with rates being so low. The SBA PPP loan process has put a lot of stress on banks. Bankers have had to work a lot of, spend a lot of extra time on that. There's a little bit of a slowdown now, but in the next few months, I think we got to remember that you're going to have the loan forgiveness application process, which appears, from what I'm hearing from our bankers, they're a little worried about it. That could take even longer than the application. So that's something they're gearing up for, in addition to probably having to look at loan deferrals again, which we are. A couple of banks that I visited with have operations in trade areas near tourist attraction or parks. And all of the businesses around those are just going to be continue to be devastated the longer that this goes on. An Iowa banker told me about, the commodity prices falling, and you've got, in addition to that, with the shutdowns of some of the big meat processors, there's some real questions on the ag side. But where there's a risk, there's also some opportunity. Who's benefiting from that are some of the small town locker plants and small town meat processors. They're overwhelmed. They couldn't take your business for several months right now. Another interesting story was a bank that the banker also owns a restaurant, and they finance some restaurants. It's in a state that's starting to open, but what they are having difficulty finding is workers to come back, because right now those people are making a little bit more money being on unemployment than they were in their normal job. So something you wouldn't think of immediately. Up in North Dakota, where the energy issues had started, probably before the pandemic, and then it kind of closed up at the same time. 90% of the fracking is done. They've capped, what, 30% of their production. So the towns that were positively impacted, you know, where the hotels and the apartments were full, you've got 20 and 30% vacancies now just in the last couple of months. So some spillover fallout from that. And then finally, in visiting with our bond department in Ben Esquerca, a couple of interesting issues that you don't think of immediately until you tie the two together, but some communities helped finance local long-term care facilities. So you issue a municipal bond. Well, as you've seen on the news, that there's some, you know, problems there. Once people get sick, you have to move them out. Now those entities will lose revenue. And so what's the city going to do to make sure that the bondholders get paid, at least their interest payments? So I'm assuming that our community banks will have to step up, work with the municipalities. Who knows what happens? Possibly provide short-term financing, obviously provide them some counsel to figure out how they can get through that. So that the fallout and the ripple effect, you know, asset quality, it's lurking out there, Tom.
Yeah, it's really, it's amazing to see all the industries that historically have been so solid. And, you know, energy, whoever thought, you know, I mean, that just always seems so solid, and are just getting turned upside down. You also mentioned real estate, the fact that more people may be working from home and businesses may not have the need for as much square footage as they historically have been leasing. So it would be amazing, I think, if we saw sort of a devaluation in the commercial real estate market, because of course that's such an important component of many community banks' loan portfolio. Do you hear our bankers talking about concerns in the commercial real estate arena?
Yeah, big time, Tom. That's what a lot of us have been working on. Our loan department, our staff and team has been working very hard on modifications. So we have a pretty large portfolio in the hospitality industry. So a number, I want to say the number is like 88% of that portfolio, Tom. We've talked to the borrowers. We've done modifications on those already. Also retail, when you have to shut down the small businesses, they obviously can't make payments to their landlords, who then can't make payments to their banks. So we've done a number of loan modifications in those. And to your earlier point, Tom, when the income for those properties goes down, so too does the value, right? They're income producing properties. So all of that will be interesting to see how that, you know, works its way out over the course of time.
Sure. Well, Dwight, we have run the full course of our time here, so we're going to have to bring this to a conclusion, but we should absolutely get together again, perhaps after a few months, and we'll see how some of this stuff is unfolded, and we can have another good conversation as this environment unfolds. So again, Dwight Larsen with United Bankers Bank, thank you for being with us.
Good to be with you, Tom, and we'll get through this.
All right. Thanks, everyone. This has been the bankbeat.biz Quick Takes video blog.